We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GBNews.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, I'm Peter Andre alongside Ellie Costello, and this is Saturday Morning Live.
Yeah, very good morning to you. Great to have your company this morning. We've got a packed show coming up for you this morning, and this is what's coming up in the next hour. More misery for train passengers as strikes are announced just in time for Christmas. How lovely. They're threatening 6 months of industrial action. We will have everything you need to know.
Boris Johnson steps into the royal race row as the names of the so-called royal races spread across the globe. Now our former Prime Minister gets involved. We reveal what he thinks.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. I almost broke into song there. Well, the weather is, anyway. Snow and ice warnings across the country today as temperatures drop below -10. Could we be in for a white Christmas?
Ooh, that would be nice.
That would be nice.
And Nigel's rumble in the jungle continues as he prepares to face the public vote. Will you be backing him? Now, this morning we're joined by my former campmate, the lovely royal commentator Jenny Bond, and we'll find out what life really is like down under.
Yeah, you're going to be telling us what it's actually like inside the jungle. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. You telling us what it's really like inside the jungle.
And how different it is now, you know, now to what it was then. I was there 19 years ago.
I cannot believe it's been 19 years since you were in the jungle.
But it makes me realise how successful that show's been.
Yes.
Because I was on Series 3, so really, if you go back, it's been like 21 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I remember you saying, we had a long chat about this, didn't we, the other day. There was no social media, or not really, compared to what it is now.
There was no social media. I mean, I think YouTube existed, but no one even really watched it then.
Yeah. So a lot's changed in that time. So we're going to be talking about that with Jenny Bond. And we're just really wanting to offer you something totally different on a Saturday, aren't we?
Want you to smile. It's basically, we don't want it to be too harsh. We just want to relax. We want you guys to enjoy it, to have fun with us. And, you know, tell us what you think and talk about subjects that are not always talked about as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is so much horrible stuff going on in the world at the moment, and we hear about it all the time. When we switch on our TVs and we watch the news, it's affronting, isn't it? It's all you ever see and hear. So we do want to offer you just something a little bit lighter, something to ease you into your weekend and make you smile on a Saturday.
And that's true, because as soon as we mentioned train strikes, you went, oh,
boring.
But then you were affected by it, and we'll talk about that later. Today, actually.
Yeah, so hopefully, yes, we're going to get into all of those things and what really matters to you at home. But this show is also nothing without you, and we want to hear from you. So please do email us, gbviews@gbnews.com. And we're doing something new as well. You can use the hashtag AskEllie or hashtag AskPete, and you can ask anything.
You can. Doesn't mean we're going to answer everything, but we can. But before we do anything else, Aaron has all your news headlines. It looks like a legend.
A very good morning to you. 3 minutes past 10, Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. All flights from Glasgow Airport have been suspended because of snow that was heavier than forecast. Temperatures dropped to as low as -10 in some places overnight, and yellow warnings are still in force for snow and ice across many parts of the UK. Several sporting events have been cancelled, including FA Cup games, Scottish League matches and today's racing at Newcastle. A meteorologist, John Hammond, says the cold temperatures, though, won't last long.
The focus of the cold shifting northwards, something a bit milder trying to push in from the south. Then the cold air sweeps back south again, later on Monday into Tuesday. So we're not waving goodbye to this cold spell just yet. I think through the middle of the week, potentially further severe frost. And then later on this week into next weekend, a complete transformation. It's going to turn mild, wet, windy, soggy and horrible.
Well, rail passengers are facing yet more disruption as train drivers continue to strike over pay. No East Midlands trains are running today, and there's a limited service between London and Scotland on LNER. Separately, an overtime ban across all services in England until next weekend will cause further chaos. Now, ASLEF members have voted overwhelmingly to continue taking industrial action for the next 6 months. The Rail Delivery Group says they should accept an 8% pay offer. Shadow Culture Secretary Thangam Debonair says the government need to start negotiating.
Strikes help none of us, the working people who want to get to work, people who want to get to visit family and friends. It's really important that these strikes are settled as soon as possible. And I really hope that the government and the unions can negotiate that and a fair settlement as soon as they can.
An 84-year-old man's died following a huge house explosion in Edinburgh. The blast, which happened in the Babberton area last night, was heard from several miles away. A 43-year-old woman and a 54-year-old man have been taken to hospital, and a number of neighbouring properties were evacuated as a precaution. Police say there are no suspicious circumstances. A GoFundMe page has been set up to help raise money for the family. Boris Johnson's expected to admit he did make mistakes during the pandemic when he appears before the COVID inquiry next week. The former Prime Minister, however, will argue that his government got the big decisions right, with the Times claiming he'll say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed. Some of his senior staff have already given evidence criticising his indecision and poor leadership. Fighting in Gaza continues for a second day after talks to extend a week-long truce with Hamas collapse. Mediators say Israeli bombardments are complicating attempts to bring another pause to hostilities. It's after southern parts of Gaza came under intense bombardment yesterday, with Israel saying they struck more than 200 terror targets. Meanwhile, rocket sirens have sounded in Israeli communities. That was earlier this morning. Both sides are blaming each other for the collapse of the truce, with Israel accusing Hamas of refusing to release all the women it holds. A US judge has ruled that Donald Trump isn't immune from being held accountable for 2020 election interference. Mr. Trump's lawyers argued presidential immunity, saying his attempts to reject the election results fell within his presidential duties. But the judge says the former president will be prosecuted like any other citizen. Mr. Trump's accused of unlawfully trying to overturn his election defeat. That's it for the moment. We're live across the UK on TV, digital radio, and if you want us on your smart speaker, just say play GB News. Now it is back to Ellie and Peter.
Thanks, Aaron, and welcome, Peter. I didn't say that to you at the top of the show, but welcome, our first show together.
I feel very welcomed here today. I came in, it was really quiet when I first walked in today.
He was here early, he was
Had my
very
coffee, feeling great.
Oh, good.
Thank
And you're excited to get going, aren't you?
I am. I love the fact that this is just a little bit later on a Saturday. It's not
nice
like 6
time.
a.m. This is great.
No, it's going to be really, really lovely. And do you know what? It's just reminded me, actually, you can see the Christmas tree out the corner of your head there. Yeah. It looks so festive and wonderful in the studio today. Oh. Do let us know if you put up your Christmas tree at home, because we haven't yet. We're a bit rubbish, aren't we? You haven't put it up in your house, I haven't put it up in mine.
We have taken it down from the loft, though, so we have done something.
You've started the process.
Kind of got it from there to there. It's just... But Emily wants to put the tree up, so I've got to let her do it.
Oh, so it's Emily's job in your house?
No, it's not Emily's job. She's made it her job, so yes. I'm not saying it's her job.
And what theme does she go for? What colours?
Whatever she feels like.
Oh, it changes.
It changes. There's all little bits she adds to it.
Well, you can imagine mine is gold with bows.
Gold's a good colour this year, I think.
Yeah, oh, it's lovely.
It seems to be right.
A bit different. Well, let us know if you've got your tree up yet and what colour you've gone for. Do send us pictures, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, Pete, you're very lucky I'm here this morning.
I am.
And I'll tell you why. Because there were no trains.
Well...
No trains.
Right.
That's because members of the Train Drivers Union, ASLEF, at East Midlands Railway and LNER have walked out today.
Yeah, the announcement comes as train drivers start a week-long overtime ban, which is expected to cause disruption to services across England just in time for Christmas shopping.
Yeah, it's not a great Christmas present for us all. ASLEF have voted to continue strike action for the next 6 months. It's in this ongoing dispute over pay, and it does feel never-ending, doesn't it? Well, our political correspondent and our friend, Olivia Utley, is with us now in the studio. Really good to see you, Liv. I mean, what do the train drivers want here? Because they've got, I think it's a median salary of about 65k, 4 days a week. I mean, lots of people would say it's a very cushy deal.
Well, absolutely. I think lots of people already are saying that it's a very cushy deal. They say that all they want is for the government to sit down at the table and have a conversation with them. They say that the government hasn't sat down with them since January. The government argues that they put this offer on the table. They say that this is the most generous offer that they're going to get. It will raise, as you say, the median pay for a train driver to £65,000. And their average working week is 4 days long, 35 hours a week. Lots of people say that's sort of plenty to be getting on with. But the train drivers want more. Mike Whelan, the chief of the union, is saying that he needs them to get a bigger rise because they haven't seen a rise in 5 years, and now that 65 grand salary would actually work out as less than it worked out 5 years ago because of inflation. So they're asking for a rise. They haven't said specifically how much. They just want to have a conversation, so they say. Now, it feels a bit like sort of one step forward, 2 steps back here, because this week we heard that RMT, the other rail union, have just agreed a deal with the government, which is a 5% pay rise, backdated to 2022-23, and some reassurance about job security. There was a question mark over whether some of the jobs in the RMT union were going to be automated, for example, automated opening doors on trains. They have just agreed a deal with the government. So from now on, we won't expect to see staff working at stations and on trains striking. But, you know, that's not great. I mean, all very well, but if the drivers aren't there, then the trains aren't going to move anyway. And we are expecting a lot of disruption. We're now braced for 9 days of train strikes starting from today. It's East Midlands Railway and LNER today, another 4 operators tomorrow. And over the next week and a half, we're expecting to see 15 different train operators walk out. And for the whole time during that, there's going to be a union-wide, so that's all of those train operating companies, ban on overtime. And when overtime is banned, then basically the trains stop running.
OK, so obviously they're going to want to do the strikes at the most powerful time to get what they want, right? But obviously it's Christmas time, and there are some people who only get to see their family or friends once a year. I mean, is this the right time?
Well, as you say, I mean, what the head of the union, Mike Whelan, has said is that he doesn't want to disrupt passengers' lives. He just wants to send a message to the government about how bad working conditions have got for train drivers. But obviously, as you say, they do choose to hold these strikes at the most inconvenient time possible to cause maximum impact. Now, it's a tricky line for train drivers and all strikers, really, to walk, because they've got to cause as much impact as they possibly can in order to hammer home their point to the government, but at the same time they can't anger passengers so much that they lose all interest and lose all sympathy for their cause, because they could end up, you know, driving the government even further away, because the government only cares about what voters care about. And if voters are seen to think, hey, I've had enough of these train drivers, then they're not going to get their pay rise.
OK. Liv, really good to see you this morning. Thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on what is a very long-running dispute and set to continue.
Absolutely. Now, later on in the show, we're going to be joined by the brilliant singer-songwriter Tom Ball.
Now, he'll be familiar to many of you for his appearances on Britain's Got Talent, but now he's eyeing up a Christmas #1.
All right, let's take a listen to his new single, Winter Song.
They're singing winter song, a celebration for all season long. Singing like they always knew, all their wishes will come true if they sing out loud and strong. They're singing from their heart for all the children here are worlds apart, with their faces all aglow.
Well, I quite like the sound of that. Very
Sounds
Christmassy, and I do like the video as well. But of course, a little bit of a spanner in the works, really, for Tom Ball, because he might not get #1 this year, because, of course, we've lost the late, the great Pogue singer, haven't we, this week, Shane MacGowan, and his wife wants him to be #1 this Christmas. I think lots of people are going to really support that.
Absolutely. I mean, he's one of the most influential for Christmas songs.
Yeah.
He's,
and it's
theirs is the best.
always in the top 10, isn't it, at Christmas?
Absolutely.
So
this year it might do #1.
I reckon it might do as well. You know, it's only ever got as high as #2. So really interesting to see what happens this year. I quite like it.
Yeah, we'd love you to email us too your favourite Christmas song, because there are loads out there.
Yeah, there certainly is. gbviews@gbnews.com. And we are very pleased to say we're joined now by Matthew Stadlen and former Brexit Party MEP Belinda de Lucy to chat us through the top story today. Really good to see you both, and very coordinated, you two.
I've got my Tory blue tie. I'm just confused, Belinda.
Oh, but you look dashing in blue, both
he's
of
got
you.
his red socks on.
Really lovely. Oh yeah, we can see you, Matthew. So let's talk about Christmas #1 then, and that really sad passing of Shane MacGowan. I mean, what a loss.
Such a tragic story, especially as Kirsty, the co-singer, also suffered a tragic death back in 2000 and was taken far too quickly. So it has an eeriness to it anyway, the song, and now with the passing of the two singers, I think it's added to it. But it's the most popular karaoke Christmas song in our household.
Understandable.
Because it does the best, and it's so sort of Georgian, Dickensian, Victorian. It covers all the centuries of the poverty line of trying to celebrate the holidays when you're down on your luck, and it really reaches out, especially nowadays, I suppose, in this cost of living crisis as well, when times are really tough for everyone. The language is rough and gnarly, which is great in this over-sensitised, sensitive world where you don't get much of some true grit in lyrics anymore. I know some of them have been removed and replaced because they're deemed offensive now. But I thought it's a wonderful song, and I hope it reaches #1 and is sung all over karaoke.
And do you think it will, Belinda? Do you think it will make it?
I think it will. We're a sentimental bunch in this country.
I think it partly depends on how much he resonates with younger people, because, I mean, I'm not young, but I've been piecing together the extraordinary life of Shane MacGowan in recent days since his sad passing. The first time I came across him was on a political show on a different channel years ago, when he came on to talk about something political, I think the smoking ban, possibly, and he was actually smoking a fag in the studio. He'd come from a gig and he was the worse for wear. I think he struggled a bit with addictions, perhaps. But he was also this wonderful musician, and he had this incredible song, the Christmas song, that the fairy tale knew. I wasn't aware that that was him, so I've now pieced it together. And I'm curious to know from you, as someone who has had a number one song, whether you were influenced by him and what he was like as a musician and as a singer, as a voice.
Well, I mean, actually, thinking about what you had just said, Belinda, about them taking out some of the lyrics, which is, in my opinion, terrible, because the original is the best. And I think they influenced everybody in some way. I mean, everyone wants to at least get a Christmas song that sounds even remotely half as good as what they did. Yeah, I mean, I think they should re-release it with the original lyrics and just not let people care about what they think.
Where does it rank for you as a Christmas song?
Oh, it's definitely, I would say, in the top 3 for me, for sure. But you see, I grew up in Australia, and it was a little different there. And so we had songs that were really popular in America as well as the UK. But that's always been. Is it your favourite?
How do they actually take out the lyrics when they change the lyric? How does that happen?
I don't know, but I just think it's wrong. That's what it was. That's what everyone fell in love with.
And it's of its time, and it was authentic. And the problem with sanitising songs now is that people lose the context. The idea of teaching young to put things into context is disappearing because we're just trying to wrap them up in cotton wool, or you can't hear this offensive word. Well, actually, the word that was used in the song wasn't particularly offensive at the time. It just grew to be offensive. Who knows what will be offensive in 10 years' time and what songs are going to be butchered because of it.
Just remember, and this again is just my opinion here, but a lot of people get offended because they can.
Yeah.
They might not necessarily, some will be genuinely offended, but a lot of people get offended because it's OK to be offended.
I think in this case, and I think the word, I don't know whether we're even allowed to use the word, so I won't use it, but it's a homophobic word beginning with F. And I think key to this question is, was it intended in that homophobic context at the time, or was it a word for something else? I think in Ireland it could be a word for meat. If it was a word for meat, then of course it shouldn't be taken out. If it was intended at the time, and I don't know, I've got no evidence to suggest it was, homophobically, then of course it should be taken out, because it's not just about people like us sitting on a sofa who taking offence because we choose to.
Okay,
if
great.
you are gay, then you don't want to have a
do
homophobic word in a Christmas song.
All the rap songs in all the world, then, you think that they should erase the word bitch? Because I find that massively, offensive when it's used in a really aggressive way. But I also can see it's a song, I put it in context, and I wouldn't go around saying it needs to be erased so my ears don't hear it. There are some...
But like I said to you, there are some people that are genuinely offended, and I understand that. But there are also a lot of people that say they're offended just because they can be offended. There's so many...
Society we're in at
the moment. It's just almost like, well, let's complain about that because we're allowed to.
Well, you will certainly have an opinion on this one at home. Do let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.com. We've got another great story here for you, haven't we, Pete?
We do, about the Greek tie. Now, when King Charles was wearing the tie that had the Greek flag on it.
Have we got a photo of this? He's got Greek flags, hasn't he, throughout the tie. If we just lose that strap, that's it. And the matching... What would you call that? The pocket square thing?
Yeah. What is that called?
Neckerchief, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is here, right, his dad was of Greek origin, so...
He was a Greek prince, wasn't he?
Yeah, so, I mean, to me, I don't know what you think, but
It's very cheeky.
I don't reckon he did it on purpose.
I think it's fantastic. I enjoy it, but there's no doubt he's causing political mischief here at home in order, in my view, to reach out to the Greeks and say, hang on, this disaster of a PR week for our relations, I'm on your side.
So just to bring you up to speed, if you're not aware of this is at COP28 in Dubai at the moment. King Charles is wearing a Greek flag tie and the pocket square. This is all about the Elgin Marbles or the Parthenon statues, whatever side of the debate you're on. Essentially, there's been a row this week that's erupted about whether they should be returned to Greece or not. And the Greek Prime Minister came over. Rishi Sunak did not meet him. And now we see, in the last few days, King Charles wearing a Greek tie. Was it intentional, Belinda, do you think?
Yes, I do think it was. I feel very protective of the monarchy. I think it's much bigger than any one king or queen. And so I do get concerned when monarchs dabble in politics. I don't like them putting the monarchy at risk. And I think it's fun and it's fine, but I just don't think it's a great path for our king to go down.
Is it dabbling, though, or is it just a tie?
Yeah, well, I think at any other point it would have been just a tie and fine. It was the timing of it all. And I think with the Elgin Marbles, you know, again, it's always just Britain that is targeted with having to be punished for our past. There are plenty of museums all over the world that have, you know, objects that belong or that were bought from other countries. So I don't think we should have anything to be ashamed about.
Before I ask you what you think, I'm going to throw it out there. What if it was King Charles's footman that picked the outfit? I'm just saying, what if it wasn't him?
I was looking on X or Twitter yesterday, and GB News' own royal correspondent was saying that he'd heard that it was a coincidence. Now, I don't know whether he heard this officially or not. I can't believe it was a coincidence, because this has been an extraordinary week for the Prime Minister. It was a massive snub to the Greeks. In my view, it was totally unnecessary. On the substance of the Elgin Marbles, I'll put it like this. Imagine if Greece had half of the stones from Stonehenge.
Absolutely.
Rishi Sunak would be jumping up and down, demanding them back.
I don't think he would. I think it's like asking the Louvre to give back the Mona Lisa to Italy, or, you know, what about London Bridge that was bought by an American and taken to Arizona? Are we going to say that's part of our heritage? We want it back. It starts a whole ball rolling. 20 years ago, it would have been fine. But in this climate of decolonisation and punishing the wicked British, it would start a horrible precedent of us emptying our museums back to the world. And only us, no other museum.
Well, as a fellow Greek, I'd like to say thank you very much for that. Thank you, Matt and Belinda. You're going to be back later to discuss Boris Johnson wading into the royal race route.
Yeah, loads of stories to get through.
Coming up, we're bringing you the latest news from the jungle.
Yeah, you're with me, Ellie Costello, and my wonderful new co-presenter, Peter Andre, on GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll be right back.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning Live with myself and Peter Andre. Now, you're going to like this next story because you have been in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, haven't you? And there have been some shock departures from the jungle this week, so we thought it was only right that we delved into the goings-on. As well as taking a look back at it, on my opinion, on the best series, we're going to be talking about 2004. Was it 2004?
2004.
When our very own Peter Andre claimed second place.
Actually, it was third. Oh. But who's counting? I wasn't first, that's for sure.
Who wrote that?
I'm always very excited to welcome my fellow campmate Jenny Bond, who I haven't spoken to for years. She's going to give us her thoughts on this series and, of course, our own series. How are you, lovely Jenny? You all right?
Hello. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
does this series bring back memories?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I'm sure it must do for you as well. I always think of you when I cook rice, actually. You were really good at rice. You were an ace at that. And you kept us happy singing. And, well, yeah, I think we had a lot of fun. We got on pretty well, didn't we?
We had the best time. You know, it's really weird when you think about it, Jenny, that there's not many people in the world that have experienced the jungle. And, you know, I mean, in my situation, obviously, it's my children are the only two ever jungle babies, really, that came from... Yeah, so isn't that amazing? But what about you? Do you watch it and just sort of think, oh, my gosh, you know, you can smell the smells and taste the food and...
I do, and I think who's sleeping in my bed? And I feel quite nostalgic about it because I think for us, you know, it was such a break from, well, for everyone, I suppose, from social... I don't think there was social media, but a break from your phones, a break from your emails. I found it very tranquil, a little bit boring. I think that's the worst thing, being bored in the jungle.
Yeah. So what are you making with what's happening now and with Nigel Farage?
Well, I think Nigel is showing his vulnerability. He's also got naked ambition, which I think is a little bit off-putting, personally. Someone who feels he has to do the trials because he wants 25% of airtime. I don't think that's very endearing. And then when he does get to do the trials, he doesn't seem to be very good at them, actually.
I know, Jenny, I was a bit disappointed with that Bush Tucker trial the other day. I don't know if you watched that one. I think he had to stick his head underwater and he couldn't manage it. And I was like, come on, Nigel, it's only water.
Yeah, last night he couldn't undo a padlock. He was completely incapable of getting a key in the right hole, it seemed. So, yeah, not too good for him. And Fred, I mean, Fred, I'm sure he's absolutely lovely. He is, but he's a little bit of a prima donna, isn't he, around the cooking. And the cooking is one of the best things of the day because it's so boring. If you get to cook, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, you're absolutely... I mean, I remember the whole cooking thing. It was sort of like just a dream to be able to eat anything. Now, when we were in the jungle, I have to say the actual real story that should have been focused on was you and Johnny Rotten, because you had someone who was anti-establishment. You were the Raw correspondent, and there was some sparks there, but it didn't really... I don't think they really showed a lot of that. Do you remember all that?
I remember getting on really well with John, actually, because I felt that he loved the jungle, the wildlife, and the experience like I did. And we had a couple of discussions, I suppose, about royalty, but I felt that he was apart from you, one of my best mates in there. I mean, the person I didn't get, that everyone thought I would get on, was Lord Brocket. And he and I did not get on.
Lord Brocket. Yeah, but I just thought that, yeah, you guys together were a real... I know what you're going to say. I can feel it.
I know. Literally, Jenny, looking back at these pictures, absolutely incredible. Anton Deck looks so young. I mean, I know it was 19 years ago now. Pete, you look so different.
OK, what
the hair,
hang on.
I mean,
just say what you're going to say.
The headband.
Just say I looked really young there.
You look really young.
That's what you're. Yeah. That's what you're getting
really
at.
But it was 19 years ago, to be fair.
It was. Headband was great though. I still rock them once in a while.
You like your accessories, don't you? But that's lovely, Jenny, that you and Peter clearly had such a lovely friendship in the jungle. Do you feel like you do form really close friendships really quickly when you're in that kind of environment?
Oh, I think you have to, yeah. I think the secret is to be yourself, and there are other people that you get along with. Just nestle up with them. I remember being very sort of motherly to Kerry Katona because she a bit frightened of something. She got a bit upset from time to time. And she was brilliant. She was the queen of the jungle. And Pete, you remember on the last day, I think you were encased or in a whole lot of spiders or something, and you came back and you were really stressed about it. And I remember rubbing your back, which was a pleasure.
I have to say, Jenny, you were one of the nicest people ever, honestly.
Oh. Well, that's very sweet of you. Right now, things have changed so much. I've got my two little grandchildren in the background, and I hope they're going to behave because they're very tiny, so they're doing their best to behave.
Look, Jenny, whilst we've got you, we need to ask you about Endgame, the book that everyone is talking about this week. Obed Scobie, the naming of those two royals, which we're not going to do on the show today, but somehow made their way into the book in the Netherlands before it was pulled. I mean, what do you make of this whole debacle this week?
Well, I think it's very sad. I think it's a very unpleasant, nasty, snide book. He makes some very unflattering, cruel, I think, remarks about almost every member of the royal family, except, surprise, surprise, Harry and Meghan. And the naming of these two individuals, I think, is very disruptive to the work, the good work that they are doing. And I'm surprised that Buckingham Palace have taken a rather different stand on this. Instead of saying nothing, they're making it very clear that they actually are considering all options.
Yeah, I mean...
And so include legal action.
Yeah, the silence definitely is deafening, as they say. Do you think Harry and Meghan had anything to do with it?
Well, you know, we have to take them at their word. I don't think they're liars by any means. I would never accuse them of that, and they are letting it be known. They've said nothing officially, but via, I don't know, friends or whatever, because they don't talk to the mainstream media, they're saying that they haven't had anything to do with it. I think it would be helpful if they stood up and publicly said that and denounced the book and what's in it. But they haven't done that either.
What do you make of Prime Minister, our former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson? He's been speaking or writing in his Daily Mail column, and he says that around this question of Prince Archie's skin colour, he's written that it's not remotely racist to question a baby's skin colour before they're born. What do you make of those comments?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, Sir Trevor Phillips, who is a very well-known major equality campaigner, has said the same, that it's absolutely perfectly normal in a biracial family to say, oh, I wonder what our baby's going to look. Will it look like mum or dad? Will it have ginger hair? Will it have ginger hair? I mean, is that offensive to say, will it be ginger? Will it have a big nose? Will it have big ears? You know, it's the kind of discussions normal people have. So I think it is a storm in a teacup.
Jenny, really, really good to see you this morning. Lovely to reunite the friends through the screen. Thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you for your time.
You know, this goes back to what I was saying before, where people get offended because they can, right? And my family's Greek, and we always talk about, is the baby going to be dark? Is the baby going to have dark eyes? Is the baby going to be English-looking, you know, with the blue eyes? How is that offensive? That is a normal conversation families have. You know, I don't know. That to me just makes no sense.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because we weren't actually in the room, so we don't know what the conversation was. But I think you're right in if you're literally just speculating about what the baby might look like. I think that's natural with any couple, isn't it? Just to talk about what your baby might look like.
It's very different if you say something malicious.
Yes.
If you're saying it in a malicious way, of course it's offensive.
Yes.
But if you're asking a question, and again, we weren't there, so we don't know.
No, but really interesting, though, that you're saying that happens in Greek families and you've experienced it yourself. Yeah, well, let us know what you think of that. We know that's going to get you talking at home. GBViews at gbnews.com.
One thing for sure, if it's Greek, we're always going to have big noses. Anyway, coming up, we're talking to the genius couple tackling the vaping epidemic among children.
Yes, plus in the studio we'll have the creator of a free online mental health platform called Just Ask a Question. It's really good, isn't it? So really looking forward to that. You're with us on Saturday Morning Live on GB News.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Can you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. morning. You're watching Saturday Morning Live with myself and Peter Andre. Really, really good to have your company. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is something that might prick your ears up this morning. You might have heard those really, quite frankly, scary statistics regarding the rise in children who are vaping. But it is difficult, because it's quite a difficult thing to detect, isn't it, if kids are vaping?
Yeah, so we're really pleased to be joined in the studio by Simon and Jean Hassett, who are the founders of Vape Guardian. Fantastic, fantastic thing you guys are doing, a fantastic centre. So tell us about it, please.
Primarily, we've made a device for schools which gets fitted in hard-to-police areas that can tell teachers through an app or email if kids are vaping.
Because it is a growing problem, isn't it? I mean, we just spoke about those growing statistics. 2023, 20.5% of children had tried vaping. I mean, it's vast, isn't it, in schools?
It's no surprise, really, because the flavours are so targeted at children. They're in shops next to the sweets. There's bright colour packaging. If I was a kid, I'm sure I'd want to give one a try.
So where did this start with you guys? Why did you want to create a sensor that can detect when kids are vaping?
Well, we've got a really close friend of ours who's a secondary school teacher, and he came to Simon and said, you know, just on a casual conversation, that there was nothing to be able to police it in schools. There was no way of being able to, you know, get on top of the problem. So then that's when you went off with your toolkit then and said, hang on a second, there's something we can do here. So that's where it started, and then the more we got into it and the more we researched it, it just, yeah.
I mean, it's a very clever idea, because obviously you can't have CCTV cameras in toilets and things like that in the schools, but a sensor is a brilliant idea. But, and just please correct me here, is it true that I read somewhere that schools are trying to not have to tell the parents if their kids are caught vaping or something? Because I'd be furious if my kid was vaping and no one told me.
Yeah, every school seems to handle it differently. We found out a lot of schools were just straight up suspending kids as soon as they caught them, which we thought was terrible, because these kids are getting addicted and they're marketed, so it's not really their fault. Some schools keeping it quiet, trying to get the kids into detention, because I think it might look like they've got a problem. So we've introduced safeguarding by working with the 300 schools that we're in to help schools know how to help kids stop vaping and beat the addiction. And
you guys have got 4 children, haven't you? So this is a cause really close to your heart. You must be really worried about that for your own kids as well.
Yeah, really worried. Our 10-year-old, she starts in September, and just from all of the parents that we know, everyone knows that it's a huge issue, but it doesn't seem to be spoken about enough publicly, I think. So we were really worried, and we are in the school that she's going to, so we feel a little bit better about that. But yeah, that's what really.
And what do you think about people who say, well, it's better than smoking? It's healthier for you. It's a better alternative. Would you buy into that, or do you still think it's just as bad?
It's just too early to tell. I think. You know, we're looking at smoking 50 years ago, when this is a whole new thing that we don't know the effects we don't know the true effects that it's going to have in 20 years' time. But we are starting to see real problems with respiratory and mental health issues.
And vaping, probably the whole purpose of it was for people who wanted to stop smoking. But what's happening is that you've got a whole generation of kids who've never even smoked before who are starting vaping. So it's almost like, you're jumping. It's almost like we're creating something new for people who've never tried anything, and it's quite dangerous, right, in that respect?
Absolutely. I think the numbers are that 80% of kids who vape, which we now know is 1 in 5 kids, 80% of them have never touched a cigarette. So we're just creating a whole new health problem here.
It's a sweet shop.
Yeah.
It's the advertising targeted at.
I was going to ask you about marketing, because I don't vape, I don't smoke, but it is tempting when you go into a corner shop and you see these wonderful colours and these lovely smells. I mean, some of our co-presenters here do vape. I probably shouldn't say that on air because you're not supposed to in the studio. But anyway, and it smells incredible. You can see just how, persuasive it would be to give it a go.
I think the difference is vaping is not peer pressure, it's peer influence, because when they're doing it, they don't see it as being a bad thing, and it's always promoted as being a healthier option. So it's just about education.
So that's why we want to separate the two topics. Smoking is one problem and vaping's a separate problem. But whenever vaping's mentioned, it's thrown in with smoking, and it does seem better on the face.
So what would you like to see happen? How do we make it more of an awareness for people?
So there's the Smoke-Free Britain consultation that the government's conducting at the moment, and hopefully we'll get something good out of that next week. I think it's going to be along the lines of they'll add extra taxes to them, which is a good step in the right direction. But we think there should be an all-out ban, except on prescription, like Australia have done, where you get a prescription if you want to stop smoking, and you can get vapes, and then it's not shown to children. It's a tool for stopping smoking.
Well, we've got a long way to go on this, haven't we? But you two and the work that you do is absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Got a really amazing product there. So thank you for coming in and talking to us this morning. Really good to see you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Right, today's one of the busiest days in the British shopping calendar, and whilst people will be looking out for the best bargains online.
Yes, they will be. But in a bid to catch shoplifters during the countdown to Christmas, West Yorkshire police are going undercover in Huddersfield town centre.
Our Yorkshire and Humber reporter, Anna Riley, has the story.
To crack down on shoplifting in the run-up to Christmas, plainclothed police officers are covertly patrolling shops in Huddersfield to catch thieves in the act. It comes as shoplifting in England and Wales has risen by a quarter in the past 12 months, costing retailers £953 million a year, and West Yorkshire is the second worst affected region.
It is a problem, and small businesses especially get targeted, and obviously coming up to Christmas there's a cost of living crisis. You know, we are seeing an increase in shoplifting, so this hopefully prevention piece that we're doing around, you know, making it so that it's harder for criminals to come to Huddersfield and to target the small businesses who are trying to make a living. That plainclothes team can actually add a different variance really, so they can go in and watch and obviously not be seen and then can apprehend offenders.
The undercover action here also supports the rollout of smart water forensic spray.
It involves marking high value products with specific DNA that's linked to specific shops. It assists us when we arrest shoplifters with products on them, and they can be linked to individual stores, and it helps at convictions in court.
The scheme's funded by Huddersfield Business Improvement District to protect retailers' income and safety.
This scheme is to send a clear message: we are watching you, so don't come into the town centre unless you're going to behave nicely and actually pay for your goods. 63% of retail crime is committed by repeat offenders. So the Huddersfield Bid Rangers know who they are, the police know who they are, hence the undercover working. So we can be proactive in our responses now, and we can make a difference this Christmas.
Shopkeepers in the town like David Whittle feel reassured by the campaign. He owns a family-run ladies' fashion boutique and is always vigilant in protecting their stock.
Everything in the shop, everything is tagged. Yes, I'm not naive, we lose one or two things. Recently we've had a lady who has brought her own handbag in and left her handbag and taken a new handbag. You can't be complacent, but it is fighting crime. Obviously when people are hard up or they're struggling for money, then crime sometimes increases. So anything that BID and the police can do, any authority can do to help is very, very helpful.
The message here is shoplifters beware, as you just don't know who might be watching you. Anna Riley, GB News, Huddersfield.
Anna Riley there with that report. And it is really difficult, isn't it? Cost of living crisis. You can see why some people who want to make their kids happy or get little presents to their family, you can see how it does happen. But it's the small businesses that I feel sorry for, and they're going to be so affected by shoplifting in the run-up to Christmas. It's really, really difficult, isn't it?
Everyone's got to be vigilant. Yeah, absolutely. Right, our next guest has made it his mission to provide resources and help. Mental health conditions are reaching crisis point, and you really want to show them, right?
Absolutely. So the thing is, for me, I think there's a lot in society at the minute, and it's all based on crisis, right? All the information you receive, everyone's saying you need to talk, and that's the message that's been bounded about for the last 20 years, and I don't think that message is working, OK? Hear me out. So it's 10 years from when someone first feels something to when they reach out on average. So their mental health gradually gets worse and worse and worse, then they hit crisis. So this message of we need to talk is sometimes really difficult for a lot of people. So when you're early on in your journey, maybe just start your mental health journey, people, let's say 24-year-old lad at work, doing really well at work, making loads of money, going out at the weekend, but something's not quite right in his head, this message of we need to talk and talk, I genuinely don't think that guy's going to be able to talk. So what do they need to do? I think they need to understand what mental health really is. It's not an illness. It's something every day that you need to manage. You can have cold showers. Is it go to the gym? Is it play the clarinet? Whatever you need to do to make yourself better. So what I'm trying to do with Jack is create a platform that's got all the right information from the right sources where people can go and understand what mental health is.
Yeah.
Because that information at the beginning could really help and stop people getting to crisis, because crisis is only getting worse.
So, Danny Gray, you are the founder of Jack, which is Just Ask a Question. So how does it work as a platform? OK, so you go onto Jack, completely free platform, and then we've got world-leading doctors on there. We've got people with lived experience. Peter's on there as well. Well-known faces. And you can go and ask literally thousands and thousands of questions about mental health conditions, about yoga, about fitness, and get the right information. Because for me, if you get the right information, it's almost... The first 3 therapy sessions, actually, it's just information given. It's not diagnosis or anything like that. So if we can give people information early on in their journey, I genuinely believe that can help them shift the mindset to make an impact to not hit crisis.
And you've got specialists in each field to answer these questions, right? Because that's... So if someone asks a question about depression, they get...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got, like, Paul Gilbert. He's the leading expert in the UK for depression. You can ask him 170 questions. Professor Janet Treasure, she's now classed as the world leader on eating disorders. You can ask her 170 questions. But it's not just about people going through a mental health crisis. It's also the support network for me. So, like the mums, the dads, if someone's got an eating disorder, how do they know how to approach them, what to say? So their questions you can ask on there as well, and ask people with lived experience on maybe how it feels and get the right information to support those people in that crisis.
Now, you're a man of many talents, because not only are you doing this, which is incredible, but, of course, you founded War Paint for Men, which is everywhere. I mean, I see it everywhere.
I see adverts for it everywhere. I mean, it's such a successful brand. What is it?
So it's a men's makeup brand. And look, that's a tool that I've used because I suffer with BDD, so body dysmorphic disorder, so I obsess about the way I look because I was bullied when I was younger. So I've been using makeup for the last 20 years as a tool. Got it on today, put it on myself.
I was looking at you thinking, have you got war paint on? Yeah, it looks good.
But it's a tool that I've used, but because of the stigma around it, similar to mental health, people and guys especially weren't using makeup. So I used it as a very good tool for me. So what I wanted to do was create a brand that broke through and sort of resonated with men to maybe try a product because it might help them. And that's the other thing for me with mental health really quickly. If you look at everything that's changed the world in mental health, in society, it's a brand, right? So Apple, Steve Jobs was more obsessed about the way the computer looked than the way it worked. So the byproduct was an amazing product. Red Bull, it's not a great drink for you, but they market it beautifully. What's the byproduct of that great brand? It's a drink. Who's the Red Bull for mental health? That's the problem for me. You need a brand that's going to break through, especially to the younger generation and people early on in their journey that will understand, oh, well, mental health isn't an illness. It's just I need to manage it every day, and that's what I want to do with Jack as well.
And, Danny, do you feel that change? So, you know, as you just mentioned, people are becoming more open about their mental health. And then with makeup, do you feel like men are now feeling like they can experiment and can put on a bit of makeup to make themselves feel a bit better?
Absolutely. Like, when I started War Paint sort of 5-6 years ago, no one was even talking about men wearing it. And hopefully we've changed that narrative a little bit so guys can try it. I'm not saying everyone has to wear it, but maybe give it a go. And that's what we've done. And the same thing we want to do with Jack is sort of change the transition of mental health is an illness in this crisis. Mental health is every minute of every day. It's like the gym, right? You don't go to the gym because you break your arm. So we want to shift that narrative of what mental health really is.
Look, Danny Gray, absolutely wonderful to meet you. What you do is absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for everything. Check out Jack, check out War Paint, and stay with us. We're going to be talking about the Elgin Marbles debate and catching you up with the latest showbiz news.
And don't forget to send us your questions about the stories in the news this week. Email us at gbnews@gbnews.com or tweet us with the hashtags AskEllie or AskPete.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. I'm Ellie Glazier. So it was a very cold and frosty start for most of us this morning, with some mist and freezing fog that could linger through much of the day. Quite slack winds, though, across much of the UK, various frontal systems bringing us some showers, particularly across the west. But for many of us, it will be a dry and bright day. That mist and freezing fog across parts of East Anglia, eastern England, could linger for much of the day. But for many of us, it will be turning brighter as that mist and fog clears. Plenty of sunshine through this afternoon. Those showers, though, along those Shannon's western coast, perhaps turning wintry over the hills of Wales and northwest England. For Scotland, though, a much drier day, plenty of sunshine, but feeling chilly here, perhaps staying below freezing for some spots. As we go through Saturday evening, those showers continue to push in from the west, again turning wintry over the hills across parts of Wales, even into parts of northern England as well, and there could be some icy stretches through Sunday morning. Staying drier across parts of Scotland, though, plenty of clear skies, and turning very cold here again. We could see down to -8 or -10, but perhaps staying just a little bit above freezing across the southwest. Through Sunday, a bit of a cloudier start across the southern half of the UK. Some icy stretches still possible through much of Sunday morning, but across the southwest, those showers widely pushing in from the southwest as we go towards the afternoon, perhaps turning heavy at times. Drier and brighter across much of Scotland, though, plenty of sunshine around, but still feeling chilly here, perhaps staying below freezing for some, but a little milder across the southwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning Live with me, Ellie Costello, and Peter Andre.
Yeah, thank you very much for your company. It's a great first day. We've got a very, very busy show for you today. Here's what's coming up.
Yeah, and I'm afraid we're going to start with some misery for train passengers, including me, as strikes are announced just in time for Christmas. They're threatening 6 months of industrial action. We will have everything you need to know.
The King was wearing a tie depicting the Greek flag at the COP28 climate summit yesterday. Was this an olive branch after the diplomatic row over the Elgin Marbles? I'm not sure.
And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Well, the weather is anyway. Snow and ice warnings across the country today as temperatures drop below -10. Could we be in for a white Christmas? I think so.
Hope so. And former Prime Minister Boris Johnson has waded into the so-called royal race row, saying it's not racist to question a baby's skin colour and it's just human nature. Do you agree? I do. Let us know you.
And this show is nothing without you. We have been inundated with all of your lovely emails. We are going to share some of those with you. Do keep them coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. And remember, you can use the hashtag AskEllie or hashtag AskPete.
But before we do anything else,
we're going to go to the news.
I just want to say
with
thank
Aaron.
you.
Oh, thank you.
And we're going to go to the news with Aaron.
A very good morning to you. It's 1 minute past 11. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. Flights have now reopened at Glasgow Airport. Well, the airport's trying to get them up and running. The airport, at least, has now been cleared after heavy snow caused it to be closed temporarily. Temperatures have dropped to as low as midnight overnight. Yellow warnings are in place for snow and ice across many parts of the UK. Several sporting events have been disrupted and cancelled, including FA Cup games, Scottish League matches and today's racing fixture at Newcastle. Meteorologist John Hammond says the cold temperatures won't last long.
The focus of the cold shifting northwards, something a bit milder trying to push in from the south. Then the cold air sweeps back south again, later on Monday into Tuesday. So we're not waving goodbye to this cold spell just yet. I think through the middle of the week, potentially further severe frosts. And then later on this week into next weekend, a complete transformation. It's going to turn mild, wet, windy, soggy and horrible.
Rail passengers are facing yet more disruption as train drivers continue to strike over pay. No East Midlands trains are running today and there's a limited service between London and Scotland on LNER. Separately, an overtime ban across all services in England until next weekend will cause further chaos. ASLEF members have voted overwhelmingly to continue taking industrial action for the next 6 months. The Rail Delivery Group says they should accept an 8% pay offer, but Shadow Culture Secretary Thangnam Debadair says the government need to start negotiating.
Strikes help none of us, the working people who want to get to work, people who want to get to visit family and friends. It's really important that these strikes are settled as soon as possible. And I really hope that the government and the unions can negotiate that and a fair settlement as soon as they can.
An 84-year-old man's died following a huge explosion at a house in Edinburgh. The blast, which happened in the Babberton area last night, was heard from several miles away. A 43-year-old woman and a 54-year-old man have been taken to hospital. A number of neighbouring properties were evacuated as a precaution. Police say there are no suspicious circumstances. A GoFundMe page has been set up to help raise money for the family. Boris Johnson is expected to admit he made mistakes during the pandemic when he appears before the COVID inquiry next week. The former Prime Minister will argue, however, that his government got the big decisions right, with the Times claiming he'll say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed. Some of his senior staff have already given evidence They've criticised his indecision and poor leadership. 46 men have been charged following clashes in Birmingham on Thursday night. The violence erupted ahead of Aston Villa's match against Legia Warsaw. West Midlands police say 5 officers were injured when missiles were thrown by visiting football fans. The 43 people charged with the public order offence. 2 have been charged with assault and another with possession of a knife. The disorder started after several Polish fans were told they weren't going to be allowed into the stadium. A US judge has ruled Donald Trump is not immune from being held accountable for 2020 election interference. Mr. Trump's lawyers argued presidential immunity, saying his attempts to reject the election results fell within his presidential duties. But the judge says Donald Trump will be prosecuted like any other citizen. He's accused of unlawfully trying to overturn his election defeat. Well, this is GB News on TV, on digital radio and your smart speaker too. That's it for the moment. Now it is back to Peter and Ellie.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, let's have a look at what you have been saying at home.
Yeah, you're very, very popular, Pete, is what I'm taking from these emails. People are so happy to see you this morning, so I want to share some of these with you. Ralphine, good morning to you, says, it's lovely to see Peter, Andre. Ellie and Peter make a lovely team. Welcome, Peter, to the best news channel. Peter, you've always been a lovely, honest guy in all of your documentaries. You've got a big fan there in Ralphine. You've got someone watching you down under as well. Martin, good morning to you, Martin, or will it be night time? It'll be night time. Good evening to you, Martin, who says he's watching the show in Melbourne, Australia, and he's really enjoying it. And Paul says, I could listen to Peter all day, love his attitude. So, yeah,
thank you
you're doing great, Pete, you're doing great.
Well, that's really, really nice. OK, Elaine says, huge fan of the news channel. All I can say is a great duo. Thank you very much. Starting 10 a.m. Saturday mornings. And Isabel says, on the Christmas tree front, because this is really important, she put hers up in November.
Oh, did she?
OK, so it's very early December, and some people are saying it's still too early. And she said a favourite song, Finley, sorry, says his favourite song is Christmas Time, Don't Let the Bells End by The Darkness.
That's a really good one, because, of course, we're talking about Shane MacGowan, and should the Pogues be #1 this Christmas? That's what his wife is asking for. Never made it to #1. It's only got as high as #2. Could it be Christmas #1 this year? That's what we've been asking you. And asking you as well what your favourite Christmas song is. So Gary says, my favourite Christmas song has got to be Jonah Louie, Stop the Cavalry. That's a really good one as well.
Some great Christmas songs.
So do keep your views coming in on all of the stories that we are talking about today. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, we're delighted to be joined by political commentator Matthew Stolden and former Brexit Party MEP, Belinda de Lucia, our very own political correspondent, Olivia Utley, joins us here in the studio.
Yes, and Liv, let's start with you first, because members of the Train Drivers Union, ASLEF, East Midlands Railway and LNER have walked out today, and don't I know it, because I couldn't get a train into work today. It caused absolute chaos on the track. So what is going on?
Well, absolutely, and I think we can expect that chaos to continue for quite a long time. ASLEF, which is the Train Drivers Union, as opposed to the station staff, are staging a 9-day walkout starting from today. Now, 15 train operating companies are going to be affected altogether. It's LNER and East Midlands today. There'll be another 4 tomorrow, and over the next week and a half, there'll be another 8 or so companies walking out. Now, what ASLEF are demanding is a conversation with the Transport Secretary. They say that the Transport Secretary hasn't sat down round a table with them to negotiate since January, 11 months ago. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says, yes, we haven't sat down with them for 11 months, but in January we put to them what we believe is a fair and reasonable offer, and they have refused to put that offer to their members. Now, that offer is a 4% pay rise, which works out as a rise from 60 grand to 65 grand for the average median train driver. Obviously, Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, is hoping that people around the country, voters around the country, will look at that stat and think, hey, £65,000 for, on average, a 4-day week working 35 hours a week doesn't sound too bad. The The train drivers are hoping that the public is going to essentially be very annoyed by the fact that their trains are cancelled and look into the issue and feel sorry for the train drivers. So that's where we stand at the moment. ASLEF have said that they are willing to strike for another 6 months, and it doesn't really look as though there's going to be an end in sight anytime soon. The only sort of glimmer of hope for the government is that yesterday they did agree a deal with RMT, which is the station staff union, essentially. They have been striking for the last year, and the government has agreed a deal with them yesterday, which is a 5% pay rise dated back to last year. So we can expect to see the staff at stations and on trains come back to work. All very well, but if the trains aren't moving, that's not much good.
So what about the timings then? I mean, if you think from their point of view, obviously they're going to want to hit hard at the time where it's going to inconvenience everyone so they get what they want. But it's Christmas time. It's a time where some people only get to see their family once a year. People still have to get to work. The hospitality sector. I mean, what are your thoughts on timing here?
Well, absolutely. Obviously, the train union here, ASLEF, is choosing to strike at Christmas because of the massive impact it's going to have on rail users. Interestingly, the usage of trains has gone down massively since the pandemic. I think it's something like a 30% decrease in train use overall. So during the working week, trains aren't as essential as they once were. Lots more people working from home, etc. Which means that the train drivers have to choose a time like Christmas when people are, as you say, going up and down the country to see their family. That is the time they choose to strike. Now, it's a very tight line politically that these unions are having to walk, a bit of a tightrope, because on the one hand they want to ensure essentially that they cause maximum damage. They won't quite put it like that, but obviously to awaken people to their cause, they need to cause as much damage as possible. But on the other hand, if the public start getting fed up, if the public think, hang on, I don't get to go and see my family because someone who's already earning twice as much as me doesn't want to go to work, then they will lose sympathy. And if they lose sympathy, they're less and less likely to be able to agree some sort of deal with the government.
OK, Olivia Utley, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on the latest in this very long-running dispute. It feels like it's never-ending sometimes. Belinda, what do you make of this? I could see you shaking your head there.
I just can't believe it. These miserable, selfish, joy-sucking Scrooges. Ooh. I have absolutely no sympathy for these train drivers. 65 grand, are you having a laugh? What, to press a green for go and red for stop button in the front of the train? I'm sure there's more to it.
I think it's slightly more complicated, yeah.
But I do think it will shock a lot of people, especially when nurses are struggling on their pay, and they do such a huge instrumental job. And the other thing is, it's so difficult for people trying to get by. You've got all the sort of green zealots telling us to get out of our cars. Then you've got trains striking. What are we supposed to do? I never passed my driving test. The roads are safer for it, so I don't drive. So I really rely on trains to go and see my parents, to check in on my in-laws, to check in on my family, especially when they're ill. And to target people at Christmas, they have no heart when they're on 65 grand a year for a job that, you know, I wouldn't say you need to be an Einstein to have.
Matt, 65k, 35 hours, 4-day working week. I mean, it seems quite a cushy deal, does it not? Do you think this is tone deaf in a cost of living crisis?
I mean, if you're looking at me for sympathy for these train drivers, you're looking in the wrong place. Because I feel absolutely as angry as you do. Well, I'll give you 2 quick examples, right? So my wife, her mother is supposed to be coming with her husband on Tuesday to watch our choir service. Every Advent, I sing in a choir. It's a tiny, trivial example, but it's quite important. She loves coming. She can't come because driving the 3 hours into London and 3 hours back just doesn't make sense when you're 65. Trains have to work. My wife commutes twice a week, 6-hour round trip to Tunbridge Wells to do her job every week, and she could have been taking the train all year, but she couldn't trust the train service. When we live in a country which is trying to cut back on carbon, which is trying to do the right thing, and we haven't got a train service that functions, it is completely absurd. I think there'll be very little public sympathy for these drivers. I had a lot of sympathy for the nurses when they were striking. Whether or not they should have done is another question, but I certainly had sympathy for them because I think they're underpaid and they do life-saving work. It's not to belittle what train drivers do, but £60,000, most people will look at that, have their Christmas plans derailed, excuse the pun, and be absolutely furious.
Yeah, we should sack them. Get new ones on board.
Don't mince your words,
You could become
Belinda.
a train driver.
I could. I'm just thinking of changing.
It's only
job
green
here.
and red, as you say. Well, let us know what you think of that story at home. I know it frustrates a lot of you out there, so do keep those views
Ellie,
coming
can
in.
I just quickly say...
Yes, you may.
This is, let's remember, happening on the Tories' watch. The government has to take some responsibility for the total failure here. Tories have been in power for 13, nearly 14 years. These strikes and many others are happening under Tory government.
Well, that is exactly what Mick Whelan has said of ASLEF. He's basically said it's on the government to get round the table. It hasn't happened yet, hasn't met them since January. So he's putting this solely at their door. Look, we've got to move on to this next story. I want to ask your opinion on this. Belinda, let's start with you. This is Boris Johnson. He's waded into the royal race row. He says it's perfectly normal for people to discuss what a baby might look like, what colour their skin may be, what eyes, what eye colour they have. What do you make of those comments?
I think some people make a career out of finding racism in absolutely everything, and they just want to keep it on life support machine because they make money off it. And I think it's really sad. This is a very private, personal moment when you're having a baby. Will it have green eyes, blue eyes? I have mixed race nieces, and it's just a fun thing to talk about how they're going to look, whether they're going to look like the dad, whether they're going to look like the mum. But to home in on this to be something massively offensive, I think it was the American comedian Chris Rock who really took them to task over this and stood up on the stage and was like, black people do it, Asian people do it. Like, we all are curious
Selective outrage.
Yes, it is selective outrage, and it's used as a tool to batter our monarchy from a couple who are on a revenge fest.
Look, let's not belittle the fact that there is racism that goes on.
Definitely.
Genuine racism.
But I think it belittles genuine racism.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what I agree with, because I think that, like I said before, you know, some people become offended because they're allowed to become offended, because they think it's kind of cool to be offended. But are they genuinely offended? If something's not said maliciously, how is it offensive? We come from a Greek family. We always talk about our kids, you know. My mum always says, is your child going to be dark hair, dark skin, or is it going to be an English baby with beautiful blue eyes and light skin? It doesn't mean anything. It's a conversation that I think every family of most cultures around the world talk about.
So guys, first of all, as I understand it, the royal family have denied that these conversations took place. So let's then talk hypothetically.
OK.
If we're talking about a family discussing the skin colour of a child-to-be, an unborn infant, it is all about context.
Yeah.
If you, as the parent, feel seriously uncomfortable about such a conversation and you think it is coming from a bad place, then that is obviously wrong. If it is a different context and in the line of what you've just been saying, then that's totally fine. We have to know the facts. Whether we'll ever know the facts or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, it is difficult, isn't it? I mean, we were talking about this. We weren't in the room, were we? And we didn't hear the conversation. And, of course, if it ventures into something that's malicious, then that's a totally different situation. But if you are just curious about what a baby may look like, there's no harm in that.
Can you really imagine King Charles, you know, who is so liberal and very aware of
and loves his grandchildren,
and the Commonwealth connection the Queen had. They just don't strike me as the kind of
King Charles
people...
has spent his life, apart from campaigning on the climate, which I think is crucial. I thought his speech yesterday at COP was brilliant and statesmanlike.
With his Greek tie.
Yeah, with his Greek tie. He has also spent great swathes of his time trying to work for a better society for underprivileged black kids in this country. He's done a huge amount with the Prince's Trust. I think we should remember that.
Yeah. Look, we haven't got long with you, but I wanted to ask you about these two Labour MPs who are calling on the public to vote Nigel Farage out of I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here.
It's a story that keeps on giving.
It is.
It doesn't come as a shock whatsoever. This is what the left do. You don't agree with me. We need to get you out, far more than the right. But I think it's a great success story. Nigel's clearly upsetting the right people. I think they're terrified that Nigel's coming across as very human, very charming, a great team player. And many of his views, well, most of his views that I know of, Nigel's views are very centrist, very moderate, all about a country making its own laws and sustaining a sustainable immigration, things that most countries around the world agree with. But the left have labelled it all far right, so he has to be this monster. And he's coming across as quite a dear chap, and they hate it, so they need to get rid of him before he starts reconnecting with people.
I'm not sure that Nigel Farage would himself even describe his views as moderate. Look, I've met him several times. We used to be presenters at the same station. We got on well. He's a difficult guy not to get on well with, but he has said some very dangerous and some very divisive things. I'm not a no-platformer, by and large, but I do think it's important that senior political figures, and he's been a very successful politician, although he's never become an MP, he's been a huge figure in this country, needs to be held properly to account and scrutinised. And just for example, I'd be very happy to go on his show here on LBC and we'd have a right old ding-dong.
We're on GB News.
Yes.
We are, but thank you for that.
What did I say?
You said LBC.
That's because we were LBC
yeah, that's what you were.
Exactly.
Can I just quickly say, because you need a little rebuttal there, the people on the left and in the political class on the left are so much more blatantly racist. Oh, too many white faces, too many white people in authority, always going on about colour, saying, making Nigel look like a saint. There are double standards targeted at people on the right. Nigel is I think, pretty
all right, well, can we forget left, right and whatever? Can we just go down the middle and know that he told Josie to shut up, which I was thought, come on, mate, you know, she's a lovely...
I was shocked
sweetheart.
at that. He was obviously getting tired, but she was about to take stars away from the group, meals away with a blunder. She didn't seem to take it to heart. I really like Josie.
As someone who's done a bit of celebrity TV yourself and is a natural at this sort of thing, how do you feel this season has gone?
I think it's good, but I think once you've been in it, you always think your season's better.
Yours was, I would say...
No, I shouldn't say that, but it's true. No, it's good, actually.
What was it like to do?
Sorry?
What was it actually like to do this?
It's not an easy ride. You know, one of the things that's really clever about this show is they starve you for the first 4 days. And what happens is that hunger starts to play on your mind. About day 4, you start getting constipated, you do. Except for Johnny Rotten, he somehow wasn't.
Oh, dear.
Which is another story. Anyway, let's forget about that. But anyway, it changes your mood. The real you starts to come out, or a different you starts to come out. So instead of plying with alcohol like some shows could do, you know, I'm not saying they do, but like, you know, Big Brother and all that, where you would drink and that personality would come out. Being hungry is a very different personality, and you start seeing people really fight for survival. That's why they do the trials, because they're like, I'll do anything, I just want some food.
What did you learn about yourself?
Oh, very good, Matthew.
Well, I learnt that, you know, I've had some terrible hairstyles along the way. written some good songs, but written some rubbish ones as well.
Did you surprise yourself in the way that you acted or behaved, or the views that you espoused?
Yeah, well, because obviously, you know, being in there, one of the things you learn is that you can actually, when you need to fight to survive, you don't think it's that harsh, but I promise you it is.
Honestly.
You can do it.
It's so good to have your insight.
Yes,
isn't it so absolutely fascinating? We could talk to you about it all morning. Honestly, Matthew, Belinda, it's been really good to have you with us. Thank you so much.
OK, so coming up, we'll be delving into the Elgin Marbles debate.
Or Parthenon statues.
Parthenon,
side you're on.
With Rafe Hadel-Manku and Tonya Buxton, who I know.
Yeah, it's going to get fire, isn't it? Yeah. So you do not want to miss that. Plus, we'll be answering all of your questions on the week's news. So keep on sending them in. Hashtag Ask Pete.
I was going to say this morning, but I was moving on to the next subject.
Hashtag Ask Pete or hashtag Ask Ellie. And you can ask anything. Doesn't mean we're going to answer it all, but you could definitely ask. This is Saturday Morning Live on GB News. Do stay with us.
Earlier on GB News Radio.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only three people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new
It's
t-shirt.
your new t-shirt. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Right, we're looking forward to this. I think it's going to get fiery, so let's get straight into it, shall we? This is the controversial Elgin Marbles or Parthenon statues debate. We have to be very careful now with this.
This week, Rishi Sunak was accused of throwing a hissy fit over the Elgin Marbles. He was due to meet the Greek PM Kyriakos Mitsotakis at COP28.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, the historian and broadcaster Rafe Hadel-Mancu is here with us, and the broadcaster Tonya Buxton. They're both on the studio. And Rafe, you passionately believe, don't you, that the marbles belong in the British Museum?
I do. I'm terribly sorry. But I should say I'm also part Greek. My great-grandfather, Zygmunt Maneko, discovered the Temple of Zeus at Dodona. And my cousin, the Greek Prime Minister, George Papandreou, is one of the leading voices calling for their restitution. So I understand, and I'm very sympathetic to the Greek cause. But it would set a terribly dangerous precedent if we were going to return the Elgin Marbles. You know, the British Museum and the Louvre and the Met in New York are a unique group of institutions. They're what we call world encyclopedic museums. They're repositories for some of the world's finest treasures. In order for us to place things like the Elgin Marbles or the Benin bronzes in their wider global context, and that speaks to our shared humanity, and it enables us to chart and compare the ascent of man, essentially. And that's why. And I think it's also quite retrograde to think that we have to return objects to where they came from. It's as if you can only go to Greece or to Cairo to look at Egyptian or Greek artefacts. Most of the world will never go to Cairo or to Athens, whereas London, Paris and New York enables a far larger portion of the world to actually view these great items.
Rafe, you are messing with a... Honestly, Tonya is just about to let go. I can just feel it.
Bring it on, bring it on.
You're setting a precedent for justice and for morality. Because let me set the example of why the Parthenon marbles are where they are. They were stolen. Greece was under Ottoman occupation at the time. And then the British...
There was no Greece.
No. I did not interrupt you, you charming man that you are. I just wanted to let it out there. Greece was under Ottoman occupation. an occupied country. Let me give you a little example of where it sits in. So imagine that when France, Paris, was under Nazi occupation, the Nazis, before the Americans came into the war, decided to sell the top of the Eiffel Tower, not all the Eiffel Tower, just the top of the Eiffel Tower, to the Americans. And the Americans took it and they put it next to the Statue of Liberty. Would that be acceptable? Would you agree with that?
Well, modern Greece is a 19th century creation.
No. Oh,
right?
this whole thing about you changing.
That's the first thing we need to
I read and write Greek, and I read it, and I can, because I've learnt modern Greek, I can read ancient Greek. Some of the languages change, but don't try to make the ancient Greeks and the modern Greeks two different things, because that is completely wrong. So my point is, to continue my argument on this one, is they were stolen. They were stolen, and the British government acted like handlers in stolen goods. So this morality story, this story is so wrong on so many levels. And the main thing is that they are part of a sequence. They are a frieze. There is 192 soldiers of Marathon depicted on the friezes, on the marbles. So you're separating. It's like cutting your family portrait in half and putting half here and half there. There is no morality to this, apart from what the British Museum says. No, their imperialistic attitude is, we've got it so everybody can come and see it.
It's not an imperialistic attitude.
It's very much.
As I was saying before, I was interrupted.
Arrogant.
Modern Greece didn't exist in the 19th century. They were purchased from mandate from the Sultan. And you have to remember, half of the marbles were already destroyed when the British arrived. If Lord Elgin hadn't saved them for the world, they probably wouldn't exist today. No, actually, I didn't interrupt you, did I? Thank you so much. So it was thanks to Britain bringing them over back to the UK that they were saved, actually. And it was Britain that made the Elgin marbles into the globally recognised artefacts that they are. That's absolutely true.
That's just rubbish. They were beautiful marbles.
Can I please at least have more than 30 seconds to develop a point? That would be lovely.
Go ahead,
Thank you so much. That's very kind. And it was the fact that they were brought to the British Museum that enabled the educated world from Germany, from France, from Italy and Britain to actually celebrate these and rediscover Greek civilization and celebrate it for the world.
Bear in mind... No, this is just... I can't
honestly,
accept, because it's
you have to accept it, because it's facts.
It's a rubbish point. Oh, the world would not...
Greek civilization was rediscovered by the British and the French, for heaven's sake. I mean, Greeks weren't the ones rediscovering Greek civilization.
British culture is because of the democratic system in Athens that happened during the Periclean time.
But the ancient Greeks and the modern Greeks are worlds apart. Modern Greeks weren't rediscovering.
How rude, how disgusting to say that.
Excuse me, my great-grandfather was discovering Greek temples in Zeus, so I do understand a bit of this. Thank you very much.
We are talking about... I am a classical history scholar as well, so I understand much of it.
Well, then you know the role that Britain played in rediscovering Greek civilization.
Thomas Bruce was allowed to go to the marbles and to take sketches and maybe take some of the marbles that had been crushed down because the Venetians threw a bomb in and some of the marbles had broken. But he didn't. He allowed his henchman, Lucieri, to actually hack off marbles from the phrases. It's written down that even Lucieri stated, oh, we had to be quite barbarous. They stole them. They hacked them off.
They saved them.
And the British Museum did not look after them.
The British saved them.
In the 1930s, they were washing the marbles with bleach and wire brushes.
They wouldn't exist today were it not for the fact that they are safely secured within the British Museum, all right? And there's a dangerous precedent that's being set here. In this era, when we've had our institutions captured by the woke ideology of decolonisation, you can just see how we would have our museums stripped if we let museum curators actually
Greece has promised to
all
give
of these
beautiful artefacts for you to display in the British Museum.
Oh, well, that's like us giving an old...
The argument is, one of the great arguments is that imagine your house is on fire, Ellie, and you lend your neighbour your paintings. You say, please, can you look after my paintings because my house is on fire. The Ottomans were ruining the Parthenate marbles. And then 3 years later, you get your house fixed, and you say, please, can I have my paintings back? And they say, no, you can't have them. That's what Britain did.
The whole argument
is no. Yeah, I'm afraid we are out of time. Thank you so much, though. Fiery debate. Were they stolen or were they saved? Yes, you're going to have an opinion on that at home. GBViews at GBNews.
I have a question. Oh, no, sorry, it's too late. I told you that.
But I'm very interested to get your view on this as well, because Peter Andre is, of course, Greek, so we're going to get his opinion after the news.
And I'll be waiting to hear it outside, so careful there.
Yeah, all right.
Let's go to Aaron with the news.
It's 11:33. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Glasgow Airport has reopened its runway after flights were suspended following snow that was heavier than forecast. Temperatures dropped to as low as -10 overnight. Some yellow warnings are still in place for snow and ice across many parts of the UK. Some sports events have been cancelled, FA Cup game, Scottish League matches too, and also the racing at Newcastle. A week of travel disruptions begun as train drivers continue to strike over pay. No East Midlands trains are running today. There's a limited service between London and Scotland on LNER. Separately, an overtime ban across all services in England until next weekend will cause further chaos. An 84-year-old man has died following a huge house explosion in Edinburgh. The blast, which happened in the Babberton area last night, was heard from several miles away. A 43-year-old woman and a 54-year-old man have been taken to hospital. Some neighbouring properties were also evacuated as a precautionary measure. Police say there are no suspicious circumstances. And Boris Johnson's expected to apologise and admit he made mistakes during the pandemic when he appears before the COVID inquiry next week. The former Prime Minister will argue, however, that his government got the big decisions right. And the Times is claiming he'll say he helped save tens, if not hundreds of thousands of lives by preventing the NHS from being overwhelmed. Some of his senior staff have already given evidence and they've criticised his indecision and poor leadership. We'll be back with more in just under half an hour's time, or there's more now on our website, gbnews.com.
Thanks so much, Aaron. And now, Pete, we have to ask you about Elgin Marbles, Parthenon statues. Tonya, I can see her looking at me from across the studio. You are, of course, Greek. How do you feel about this, Pete? Peter?
Look at Tonya, the way she's looking at me. Guys, can you...
Tonya is watching.
Please. No. Well, look, here's the thing. So I obviously did a bit of research because I wanted to know what's going on here. So obviously he claimed, Lord Elgin claimed, that he had bought these. OK, he had claimed...
From whom did he buy them, Peter?
No, I'm going to get to that. He had claimed all of this. I'm on your side at the moment. He claimed that he had bought them and he had claimed that he'd been given permission, etc., etc. Now, the problem is, of course, that there's no evidence of that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well...
Sorry?
I will say, actually, what is fantastic about this whole acquisition was that when Lord Elgin brought the marbles to Britain, he sold them to the British government to be placed in the British Museum. And the British House of Commons uniquely held a parliamentary inquiry to ascertain the legality of this sale. Now, it's impossible to imagine any other government going to such great steps to ensure that this was done correctly and followed the correct procedures.
To blur the lines of legality.
It's a testament, actually, to the integrity of the British that they actually went down that path to make sure that it was a proper purchase.
You're buying stolen goods, and they took it to the House of Commons. They're buying stolen goods. The British government bought stolen goods, bought, but the money went to the thief. That's what happened.
To the saviour.
It did not
Your
go
thief
to Greece.
is another man's saviour.
It did not go to Greece.
It
went to the Ottomans, and therefore they debated it in the House of Commons in order to try and make it a legal thing when they knew they were doing wrong. It was wrong.
But there's another point here that Tonya was saying, that there's now George Osborne's trying to arrange this sort of long-term loan scheme, you know? But we have no idea if we'll ever get the marbles back once we've given them to Greece.
Wow.
Possession is 9/10 of the law. And also we have no idea what we're going to be receiving in exchange. If I give someone my 1926 Phantom Rolls-Royce and I get back a 1982 Ford Cortina, I'm not going to be very happy if at the end of the day they refuse to give me back my Rolls-Royce.
Those marbles belong in their home. They belong the marble was taken was made actually from the Pantelake mountain, which is 5 miles away. So it's in the site. They need to sit in their home. They need to be seen as a full story. They belong to Greece, and Greece actually, in my opinion, can give whatever it likes back to the British Museum. But let me tell you, the Greeks and Kyriakos Mitsotakis are beautiful gentlemen, and they will do things nicely, unlike our Prime Minister, who threw his little rattle out of the pram and wouldn't even meet him to discuss this.
I think that was shameful. I think if Rishi Sunak wants to create a culture over the Elgin Marbles in order to win the election, I think he's lost his marbles, quite frankly.
Well, we're agreed on that one. There we go, we're agreed on that one.
And there are points, you know, the main point for me is I love what you said about the Eiffel Tower. Same with Stonehenge, if you took some of those stones.
Exactly.
You know, we'd want them back.
I don't know whether they would want them back.
The Parthenon
I've thought about that.
The Parthenon is still there. And, of course, you talk about the museums here and how it's great for the people here and people who don't get to go to Greece, but they've also got museums there. And
the Acropolis Museum is beautiful,
Yeah.
Peter. They've rebuilt it and they've left the gaps.
And it's
part of an existing building.
These items are part of world heritage, all right? They've gone beyond the Athenian state, and these are part of Western civilization
Again, this is an
and world
imperialistic
heritage.
argument.
And what I find interesting is most of the people calling for this are on the left. I know you're not, but it's a purely nationalistic argument for the left, who are usually internationalist. And this British Museum should be called the International Museum, like the Louvre and the Met Museum. These are international celebrations of world heritage and world culture.
I agree with
and it's
you.
rather retrograde to actually reduce things down to nationalism. And if I wanted to promote my culture, I would be delighted that my artifacts are on display
absolutely
in the greatest cities in the world.
To give to the British Museum lots of beautiful artifacts. Half of the beauty of the world came from Greece. You know, we know that so many structures, so many temples, there is so many artifacts that the Greeks are very, very happy to give to the British Museum.
Absolutely.
And what they should do is, and this wonderful argument that the amazing Stephen Fry gave was, wouldn't it be lovely if the British returned the Parthenon marbles, and then they could make moulds and have them up there, and actually have a film of how they cast these marbles. And here they are now. We looked after them for 200 years, and then return them to their rightful owners.
The moulds could go to Greece because, of course,
no, because their rightful home is in Greece.
There's a reason that Parliament passed in 1963 the British Museum Act, which forbids the museum
to hold on
from
to
returning
everything.
things down because these are world encyclopedic museums.
Why do you think that the president of Italy in 2008 returned back the marbles? Because
they've got enough of their own already.
Thomas Bruce, Lord Elgin, left some of the marbles in Italy, and in 2008 the Italian president knew that the right thing to do was to return these marbles to the Acropolis where they belong. So he did the right thing. The British government are acting in a lootist, imperialistic, arrogant way, and this is something that we don't want as part of our character as British people. Let's be seen to be grateful.
Well, don't speak for everybody when you say we, because you're speaking for me as well. Look, I'm very sympathetic to the Greek cause, I've told you that, but as I've said, the precedent that would be set would open the floodgates for all sorts of spurious.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you for round 2 there. Ding dong.
Can we all just get along?
Yeah.
But we do.
We get along. It's probably our one only disagreement that we have.
It's true.
You know what? You did it just as we like it, which is fiery, which we like, but also very polite. Thank you so much for that debate there.
Love it.
You'll have an opinion on that at home, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.com, so do keep those coming in.
Right, now it's time for your weekly dose of showbiz news.
Yes, have a breather. And we're delighted to have our showbiz journalist and our friend Stephanie Tecci here with us. Hi, Stephanie, how are you?
Good afternoon, Ellie and Pete.
Yeah,
Welcome.
really good
Congratulations.
to see you. Oh, thank you so much. Look, we've had a really sad story this week, haven't we? The loss of Shane MacGowan. I mean, what a legend.
And it's such an auspicious time, just before Christmas, you know. Fairy Tale of New York is one of those tracks we will hear so many times during Christmas. It was released 35 years ago, and it still feels as poignant, still as refreshing as it did when it was released in 1988. And it's quite sad because he had just been released from hospital. He was determined to spend Christmas at home. His birthday was actually on Christmas, before Christmas as well. So it's all sad timing. But now music fans in their numbers are hoping that it will get back to #1. And I think it will. And I think the beauty of that track, he's known for other tracks, of course, with the Pogues, but that track in particular, it's an anti-festive song. It's about hard times, broken dreams, and I think that is the other side to Christmas, which people can relate to, but just worldwide, people love that song, and there's been so many tributes. The Sinn Féin president, she called him a unique poet who told the Irish story in a special way.
Oh, do you think it will make Christmas #1?
I think it will.
I can't believe it's never been #1 before. It's only got as high as #2.
I can't believe that as well, because it's such a classic song, but I think it will. You always find when an artist dies or a musician dies, people start playing their music again, and now that we've got digital streams, people will be streaming it non-stop, and I won't be surprised if people actually do want to still find some of the physical copies of that, because it's just...
Yeah. I remember when the legend George... Sorry to interrupt
Yeah,
you.
no.
I remember when the legend George Michael passed away at Christmas time, and it was so poignant.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
the song did go to #1.
You associate those music with the Christmas period, so it's quite sad.
It would be really nice and really fitting for the Pogues to be Christmas #1 this year, but we can't say too much because we do have another option, don't we? We've got lovely Tom Ball on the show at the end of our show today, and he's also going for Christmas #1. We'll have to ask him what he thinks about that. Look, Stephanie, whilst we've got you, I wanted to ask you about Cynthia Nixon, because she's been on hunger strike.
She has been. Usually she's known for the glamour in Sex and the City as Miranda Miranda Hobbs, but she's also got a political background because she once tried to become the governor of New York. But this week, she's been on a 5-day hunger strike because she wants Joe Biden to put a ceasefire towards Hamas and Israel. She's saying it's not normal what's going on and everybody needs to make their statement. I do think it's quite a deadly way she's trying to do it, because if you think about it, Joe Biden only has so much power with what's going on with this war, but she's saying it's not normal for this to be happening. So she's joined 5 other politicians who've been stood out the White House on hunger strike.
It does seem quite extreme.
It does, and I think, you know, celebrities always want to make their point. Celebrities, people always think, oh, celebrities and politics don't mix. They do mix, but I think with someone who's influential like her, I don't know if this is a good way to go about it. Protest if you must, but hunger, it's a bit too much.
OK, Stephanie, it's actually really good to see you. And I love this dress. You look so festive and Christmassy.
I couldn't wait to bring out all the Christmas outfits out.
Oh, you look wonderful.
You'll see me in tartan next week.
Oh, that'll be next. Yeah, I look forward to it. Now, do stay with us, because up next we'll be meeting the artist Tom Ball, who we've just been telling you about, to hear all about his new Christmas single.
Yes, you won't want to miss it.
Earlier.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
welcome back to Saturday Morning Live. Peter's having a mint. Really, really good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for all your emails as well. So many of you getting in touch this morning. Alexander says, we've been talking about Christmas. You can see the wonderful GB News Christmas tree just behind Pete there. We've actually got Union Jack baubles, which are really a lovely touch. We're asking, when do you put up your Christmas tree? Because we haven't managed it yet in either of our houses, but lots of you have. Not Alexander, though. Alexander says, in my opinion, Christmas does not start on the first week of December. It's too soon, even now, according to Alexander.
Although it did sort of summer went into winter really quickly this year, so it almost feels like, you know, Christmas has come a lot earlier.
Yeah, and it feels very festive now, doesn't it? I mean, it feels very frosty, doesn't it? Especially this morning.
Now, Mary says, because my partner is not into Christmas, I don't put the decorations up until the day after his birthday. So next weekend, the trees will be put up.
Oh, that's a really nice way of doing it. I think I'm going to try and do mine this weekend. That's the plan.
Yeah, keep writing in, because we love this. We love hearing what you guys do.
Yeah, it's our favourite thing. Yeah, and Nicola has just got in touch saying, I think Fairy Tale of New York should be Christmas #1 this year. It's an amazing song and would be a perfect tribute to both singers, of course, after the very sad loss of Shane MacGowan this week. Do keep your views coming in. And Nicola, your email leads us very nicely into our final guest of the morning, who is singer-songwriter Tom Ball, who has his eyes set on a Christmas #1 as well.
Yeah, Tom Ball will be familiar to many for his appearances on Britain's Got Talent. Now he's back with his Christmas single, Winter Song, a great song. Let's have a listen.
They're singing winter song, a celebration for all season long. Singing like they always knew, for their wishes will come true. If they sing out loud and strong, they're singing from their heart for all the children.
Tom, you have the most incredible voice. That is a beautiful song.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah, it's an incredible song. I'm so very honoured to be able to sing it. Obviously written by Gary Barlow and Elliot Kennedy.
Wow, absolutely incredible.
Oh, they are absolute geniuses, amazing people.
And a Christmas song is a great one, isn't it? Because it could come out every single year and become a classic.
That's the hope, absolutely.
I love the fact of the video being the way it is, so it's, you know, it just brings the whole feeling together of Christmas.
Yes, childhood, nostalgia.
Very, very
Did you get a say in that?
Oh, absolutely, of course. Well, for me, when I first heard the song, I was in Elliot's studio, and he played it to me, and it just brought back all the memories of Christmas, you know, the anticipation of winter, time with family, and that's what I value in Christmas. So the music video had to reflect that.
Oh, it's absolutely a beautiful song, and you are hoping for a Christmas #1, aren't you?
Well, who knows, but hopefully.
And how would you feel then? Because there is, of course, we've had the very sad passing this week of Shane MacGowan. His wife would really like, of course, Fairy Tale of New York to be Christmas #1. Now, how do you feel about that in the year that you're going for it?
They deserve it. Oh, it's a beautiful song, an incredible song. You know, I would be happy with anything. If you want to listen to the record, listen to the record, but definitely go listen to Fairy Tale of New York.
Aww.
If by any chance it got to #2, would you be happy because of the fact that there's a story behind why it didn't go to #1?
Oh, absolutely.
But it could easily go to #1 as well, your record.
We will have to wait and see, but I will be ecstatic with #2.
Well, that's very, very good of you. Look, you've got a really packed schedule next year. You've got really busy 2024 coming up. Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, it's a super exciting year. I'm going on tour. My own UK tour, 14 dates starting in March. Thank you very much, Pete. I'll have to get some tips from you at some point about tour life.
I'll be getting tips of you after next year.
And then I've also got my own debut album called Curtain Call, releasing on in March 29th.
Oh, massive congratulations.
Thank you
Brilliant.
very much.
And tell us a bit about that album then. What was that whole process like for you?
It was, it's always been a dream of mine to release an album. You know, back when I started singing when I was 8 years old, I wanted to create music, and the process of recording has been an absolute dream. I'm getting to sing songs I love, and original material as well, which is really nice.
I wanted to ask you, so obviously times have changed in the music industry where it used to all be hard copy, vinyl, CD.
Yeah.
Are you doing any CD and vinyl versions of this?
100%. They're actually on pre-sale right now. The CD's a signed copy.
I was going to say, because then you can go and do signings. And
Absolutely.
That's a great
so you
fun
can
one.
pre-order those now, and they'll
Brilliant.
release on the 29th of March. And my hope is also to release on vinyl. I'm a big fan of vinyl myself. I collect it. So it'd be nice to have my own.
We may have some people out there that are going to say, what is vinyl? The young, very young generation. But
the big discs that spin.
Look, I wanted to ask both of you, because you're both singer-songwriters in the studio with me today, what is the best part of the process? Is it being in the studio? Is it seeing that final production, the final song? Or is it hearing the music, listening to the fans? What is it?
I'd say meeting the fans after a show. You come off stage, you're feeling on top of the world, and then you go out the house front or you go to stage door and you get to meet some incredible people.
Incredible. And Pete?
I guess performing them live, obviously meeting people is incredible, but performing the song live, you know, you do it in an enclosed space and then you hear it with all the atmosphere of a crowd. It's a beautiful feeling. You're gonna have a great time on tour.
Tom Ball, fantastic to have you with us. Good luck with Christmas #1, and thank you so much for your company. We'll see you next week.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. I'm Ellie Glazier. So it was a very cold and frosty start for most of us this morning, with some mist and freezing fog that could linger through much of the day. Quite slack winds though across much of the UK, various frontal systems bringing us some showers, particularly across the west. But for many of us, it will be a dry and bright day. That mist and freezing fog across parts of East Anglia, Eastern England could linger for much of the day, but for many of us, it will be turning brighter as that mist and fog clears. Plenty of sunshine through this afternoon. Those showers though along those western coasts, perhaps turning wintry over the hills of Wales and northwest England. For Scotland though, a much drier day, plenty of sunshine